The mechanics of permadeath have been widely debated for as long as the concept has existed. Is it a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Does it even exist? There are many schools of thought related to the concept, all arguing for different outcomes and posting different theories. And I think the best way to break this down is to do a deep dive into each one, starting with Now, the scariest prospect of death comes from the imagination of an empty blank void that you'll be floating through for all eternity. That is, at least the commonly held belief is that that is not accurate. Death will be non-existence. Nothing. No thought, no time, no existence. You won't be aware that you are dead because you will not be. It's a bit of a hard concept to wrap your head around because you are. From the moment you're born, you are. But in order to accept the prospect of the void, you have to grapple with the idea of your present self being a memory that does not exist for you. The same way that you felt nothing before birth, you would feel nothing after death. Not sleep, not darkness, not anything. Simply nothing. Aside from the aspect of heaven and hell, I do think that this is the most popular interpretation of death in the world, and I honestly do not think it holds up under intense scrutiny. Specifically getting into more abstract concepts of life, the fact that you are, right now, is statistically impossible under the circumstances understood about the universe. Because if time is both infinite and linear, there is an infinite amount of time before your birth and an infinite amount of time after your death. So the odds that time would happen to coincide with your existence at this exact moment are quite literally infinity to 1. But even if that is not the case, if time is both finite and linear, mind you, this interpretation demands that time be linear, the odds that the billions and billions and billions of years that exist, both before and after your death, are a statistical wonder. Not impossible, mind you, but inconceivably, infinitesimally small. Which brings me to my next section. The eternal recurrence is the name of a thought experiment proposed by Empedocles in ancient Greece, which essentially states that time repeats itself in an infinite loop, and that, while you do not exist for the majority of this loop, you can only perceive the parts that you are around for. Therefore, any question of the statistics as to why you exist right now are null and void, because you are living in an infinite loop. It would mean that I have written and said these words an infinite amount of times, and that you will hear me say them an infinite amount more. Every time the universe pops you out and gets to the current year, you will watch this video and you will hear these words. It's something you could never break out of or truly know, because the events of your life would play out the exact same way every time, and you would never know. Now, this has also served as a sort of thought experiment that similarly posits your reaction to the idea of the eternal recurrence is very revealing of if you are living the type of life you desire. Those who react positively to the idea of experiencing this existence again with no memories, changing nothing in the past, are, in general, living a satisfying life by their own standards. On the other hand, anyone who responds to the idea with fear or dread is not. That aside, the idea of the eternal recurrence is obviously very old, but it is still up in the air as to the validity of it. Specifically in the 19th century, the topic of the laws of thermodynamics brought the idea back into the scientific zeitgeist with a lot of debate stemming from it. In mathematics, the Poincare recurrence theorem essentially states that particles will always infinitely return to their original state, meaning that positionally, the end of the universe will look exactly like the beginning of the universe. The Bayesian probability theory is another supporter of the idea of the eternal recurrence, which, if you remember the explanation I gave about current existence at the end of the first segment of this video, it's kind of like that. Now, if you want a weirder take on this idea, there's always quantum immortality is very big in the circle of pop quantum mechanics right now, but the idea is very simple. It's based on the multiverse theory of decision-making and essentially states that every person will always make the series of decisions from their perspective that will result in the longest possible continuous survival or eternal survival of themselves. Basically, if there are an infinite number of universes, Every individual person is in the universe where they do not die. Personally, I think this idea is a little silly, as it essentially states that you will inevitably grow to survive the trials of aging, live far, far, far past 100 in an eternal state of decay, which is kind of terrifying to think about, so we will be moving on. So the concept of the Christian afterlife is very heavily misunderstood in the general cultural zeitgeist, because the belief that if one does good things, they go to heaven, and if one does bad things, they go to hell, is a fundamental misunderstanding of Christian doctrine. Specifically, hell is not even mentioned in the Bible until more modern English translations introduced the concept. There are a few examples of this, such as the words Sheol and Hades, which in ancient Hebrew roughly translate to representations of the grave, not hell as we think of it. The references to Gehenna in the New Testament as a place where bodies and souls alike are destroyed in an unquenchable fire are simply translated to hell in English versions, which makes a fair amount of sense. I mean, unquenchable fire, except for when you realize that Gehenna was a physical location just outside of Jerusalem and not a reference to the afterlife at all. And then the other main translation of hell is the Greek word Tartaro, which is specifically translated as thrown down to hell. But specifically, this is in reference to Tartarus, which is notably from Greek mythology and largely seems to be metaphorical in the sense that it is being used. Now, to be entirely fair, the Bible does mention a place of darkness and weeping and gnashing of teeth, but the idea of hell that we typically conceive of is that which is depicted in Dante's Inferno, which was a piece of Christian self-insert fanfiction written roughly 1,000 years after the scriptural canon of the Bible was already established. All of this to say, the proper image of what a hell would look like is not a place of eternal fire and cosmic justice based solely on the 7 deadly sins. Satan is not a torturer, he's just another inmate, and the more likely canonical representation would be a place barren of the touch of God, with no light, warmth, or hope. Regardless, we should also discuss the concept of heaven, because while the actual understanding of the place is generally accurate, it is never stated to be a location where you can enter through deeds. In fact, the Bible explicitly states the exact opposite constantly, but the most famous example of this would be Ephesians 2:8-10. So yes, you can be a horrible person, but so long as you have faith and ask for repentance, according to the Christian faith, you too can enter the kingdom of heaven. As for actual evidence supporting the existence of this form of afterlife, there is no evidence. At least none that would hold up under the scientific method. Obviously, there are near-death experience stories and first-hand accounts, but the nature of heaven as a concept makes it to where you cannot prove or disprove it, so it somewhat forces a leap of faith. Reincarnation is easily the area in this video that I am the least familiar with, so if I get anything wrong, please do not hesitate to let me know. But essentially speaking, it's the idea of rebirth after death in a new form. Of course, to understand reincarnation, you must first understand karma. Karma is where a lot of the misunderstandings about Christianity come into play. In Christianity, one sin, one mistake, and your only grace is God forgiving you. While with karma, things are a lot more flexible. Karma is more the reflection and sum of one's intentions and actions throughout their life. Those who live with good intentions and perform good works will receive good karma, while those who live with bad intentions and perform bad works will have bad karma. Karma is responsible for a lot of things according to the faiths that believe in it, but namely it determines the form of reincarnation that one receives. Specifically and famously, those who live with bad karma are reincarnated as lowly animals as punishment for their vices. Finally, if one wishes to break free of the cycle of reincarnation, they must attain enlightenment and ascend to nirvana. Now, I do apologize for not going further into detail on this one, but my baseline knowledge of reincarnation is very surface level, and I do not wish to spread information or inaccurate stereotypes of a living religion that others would be more qualified to talk about. I am a strong believer that no information is better than misinformation. Now, keep in mind that there is no definitive right answer, and for as far as we know, there may well never be. I do hope you enjoyed watching this video, and if you did, be sure to like and subscribe. It really helps the channel. I'm hoping to get to 400,000 followers by the end of the month, but regardless, thank you for watching. Oh, and one more thing. Happy April Fools.